So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in my hometown. I'm from Portugal. I'm living in Dublin, and it's always a pleasure to be in Portugal. So today I'm going to present this talk that is called An SVG's Tale, and is about a little girl called SVG that one day meets a boy called React, and together they start creating amazing things. So that's me. So my name is Elizabeth. Right now I'm working in Dublin in a company called Optum. I'm a senior UX designer, and also I'm CPO and co-founder of a startup. The startup doesn't have money, so it's just cool saying that. Oh, I'm a co-founder. But that's it. That's my story. So I was born in Mozambique. And when I was 2 years old, my father is Portuguese and my mother is from Mozambique. So when I was 2 years old, I moved to Lisbon, where I lived all my life, and where I work as a freelancer. Part of my life, I've been an artist. I work also doing events. And after working some years as a web designer, I had a very good job offer to go to Dublin. And I was, oh my gosh, this is the best salary I ever had in my life. So I moved to Dublin, and after almost 4 years, I started missing the good weather and the good food from Portugal. So I actually decided to come back to Portugal. So I'm kind of deciding where should I live now, because I start seeing the prices in Lisbon, and it's almost the same prices as in Dublin. So I'm kind of, should I move to Coimbra, Porto, Aveiro? So kind of, let's see. So this story is split in different chapters. The first one is I'm just going to introduce what is an SVG, then when the SVG meets React, and then I'm going to show 3 different projects. One that is very simple, it's basically a model slideshow, and the other one is the cassette tape, and finally the React Kawaii. So this is the SVG. As you can see, is this little girl. As you can see, she's really sad. She's sad because she's despised by her family, and the JPEG and the GIF, they don't like her because she's different. They say, oh, you know, you're not like us, you're really different. But why is she different? She's different because the JPEG and the GIF, they don't have all this code, and the SVG has all these codes, and this code is basically a XML-based type of markup, almost like the HTML, and actually, with this code, we'll tell how the image will look like. So if you want to draw a circle or a square, anything, you just have to know the right meta tags, the right tags, and actually, you will design an illustration or a square or a circle with that. And it's different also because it's scalable. So the SVG scales from big to small to big without losing any quality. Also, the file size, if you compare with a JPEG or a GIF, if you need a very large image and it's like a JPEG, maybe we'll have 20 megabytes. And the SVG, because in the end it's just a code file, so in the end will be a very small file size. Also, it's modifiable. So this is the best part of the SVG. With CSS and JavaScript, you can actually modify properties and animate or change colors. And this is my own definition of what is an SVG, is the image with superpowers. So, but how can you use all these superpowers? You can use the SVG as a background image, as an image or object, but actually if you want to use the superpowers, you have to use as an inline SVG. It means that you have to expose the code in the browser and the DOM, so this way you can manipulate with CSS and JavaScript. So as you can see at this part of the story, the little SVG is sad, because at this point she doesn't know that she has all the superpowers, and one day she meets this boy called React, and React is kind of, this handsome boy, always happy, and he says, little SVG, I'm going to show you that you can actually do amazing things. So in the React world, there's 2 ways of creating an SVG to transform it into a component, And the first way is to import the SVG as a React component, and the second way is to transform the SVG into JSX. So the first method, like import as a React component, you can use this if you use something like the Create React app or a Webpack plugin. So basically, you import the React component as a logo, and then you don't need to convert into JSX, because once we import, it will be inline in the DOM. You won't have HTTP requests. It's perfect for simple animations and also to style with CSS. And it's really easy if you want to update the SVG after. And then you can create small things like this, but it's a little bit tricky because if you want to create this type of animation, you have to search the, for instance, the ID in the DOM or the class, and then you have to manipulate with JavaScript. So in the end, you want to use the best things of React, like the props or states. So if you transform into JSX, once again, you won't have HTTP requests because the SVG will be inline, and all the elements will be in the DOM. It's perfect if you want to split the code in different components, and the best thing is you can make use of props, state, and all the event handlers from React. But the bad thing is really difficult then if you want to update the design. So imagine that you have an illustration, and you start splitting in different parts, like you have a sun, you have a tree, and so the sun will be one component, the tree will be another component, and after that, the designer decided, oh, I want to change one part of the tree, and will be really difficult because you already transformed it into JSX, you have to find which components, and it's really difficult then to maintain. Now, but why would you transform an SVG into components? I found two use cases. The first one is when you need to animate the SVG, and the second one if you want to create like an illustration that is like customizable. So this is the first example. It's a very small project, and it's just a simple model that I created like with React and ReactPose. And I can show you here how you can use the SVG to create like animations and creative things. So this is what I wanted to achieve. Basically, my idea was I will have like this model slideshow, and then when I click one of the arrows, it will like have this bounce movement. So first thing that I did was to convert into JSX, and then split in different elements. So I would have like the border left and the border right. They are basically SVGs. Then the styles, I'm using styled components. And then the modal.js is basically where I'm calling all the small components, all these children components. So this is basically one of the functions. It's called the handle animations. And basically here I'm just setting the state for animating like the border to true and for false, and I'm saying what is the direction that I want to move. Is it to the left or is it to the right? And then there's this set timeout that will set the animate border to false. And I'm doing this because I will use that with ReactPose, and you can see after. So basically then I have these two functions, animate left and right, where I'm calling the handle animation, and I'm passing the left or right. And this is the model JSX. And here is where I'm calling all the children components, like the border left, the border right. And I'm basically have these props where I'm saying if the animate border is true or false, if it's left or right, and what the direction will be. There is basically, in this case, for 400 milliseconds. And this is basically the border left. So I'm using the ReactPose. As you can see, this is just the SVG. It's very small. And I'm basically just animating these path definitions. And this starts with the wave reset. So when I click one of the arrows, the animate border is set to true. After 400 milliseconds, it's set to false, and it goes to the left or right. This is the ReactPose. So basically, if it's left, it will run this animation from wave reset to wave contacted, and if it's the right, it will go from wave reset and wave expanded. So as you can see, the SVG itself, it's really difficult to, if you want to create like complex illustrations and do your own code. So for this, I'm using Sketch. So basically with Sketchup, it creates automatically like the paths, definitions. And so I created like 3 different definitions, one contracted, reset, and expanded, and then I just have to animate from one to another. Okay, let's see the results. And that's it. So when I'm clicking right, it's go from wave contracted to wave expanded, and the same to the left. And it's something very simple. It's just a basic model, but just putting the SVG and animating, we can like create things more like creative and different. So yeah, so at this point of the story, the SVG starts being like happy because he starts seeing, oh yeah, probably I'm not that boring. And so as you can see, start being really happy and saying, oh, that's awesome. So this is the other example. This is a much more complex example, and I created, I think around 2015, 14. I was living in Lisbon at the time, and for some reason I thought that I could be an iOS developer. So I went to this school called Edit, and I took like a 6-month course. At the end of the course, I realized that I could never work with C# and all of these technologies. And actually, I found so difficult to work with the Xcode auto layout that after some years, when I moved to Dublin, I was like deleting things from my computer, and I found out this design that was actually for this iOS app that I was trying to build. And I was like, I was a little bit sad because I did the code and the app was working, but was not the way I wanted. So at that time, I started looking into design, and I think, okay, now we are in 2016, the technology evolved, and how can I create this again, but with technologies that I actually know? So I started, okay, at that point in my life, I didn't know React. I was basically new like jQuery. So I said, yeah, I'm going to create this with jQuery. So I found out there's this web audio API that you can use with Chrome, and you can actually record your voice and Chrome or Safari. And I said, okay, let me try to create this with jQuery using the web audio API. And years after, I started working with React, and then I did the project again, this time with React. So the first thing that I did now in this second version with React was to export from Sketch, to export the SVG, also optimize with SVGo. And after that, I start like splitting all the cassette tape in different small components. So inside this cassette folder, I have like the background. There is this part, and then the center is where I have the wheels, and the time box, track title, and as if you can see, I have here the pause and the play, one on top of each other, because when you export, you need all the elements, because then we're going to manipulate with CSS and JavaScript. So after that, I start like creating, I think it's a little bit difficult to see, but basically what I'm trying to do is, here is I have a play function, and I'm just basically getting the states from React and setting the states, if it's playing, what is the playlist, what is the current track, and if it's recording, if it's true or false, and basically so then when I click is play, it set the state of is playing to true or false, and it sets the states of is recording to true or false. So this is the example of the way I'm passing the props. So basically, for all the children components like center, track title, buttons, we can pass like if it's playing, if it's recording, the functions next track, previous track, and to play in the record functions as well, and also the audio visualization. And this is basically the center, and here is basically if it's playing, I'm receiving like the props that actually in the main component is a state, but in the children, it's like the props. So if it's playing, I'm using like animation created with pop motion, and so if it's playing, the wheels are going to rotate. And this is the way that you can actually interact with SVG. So I'm using the React event handlers. So once you click, you press one of the buttons, in this case the play and pause, it will start playing. So let's see the demo. And I can actually like record my voice. So the idea was because I really like to do hip hop in the past. So then I would have here what I recorded. I have like other loops. And now this is the best part because it's the part that I actually do the hip hop. Like I'm going to do a freestyle in Portuguese. And let's see how it goes. Ok. Ok, quando entro já sabem como é que é. Cama aberta improvisando mesmo à boia. Quem não acredita nisto sabe que eu fico à toa. Hoje eu estou em Coimbra, ontem eu estava em Lisboa. Mas não importa porque eu vou seguindo em frente. E se tu não acreditas sabes que isto é diferente. É mesmo assim, agora eu vivo lá na Irlanda. Mas sabes que isto aqui não é nenhuma propaganda. Eu vou seguindo nesta cena, não há StopNation. A gente faz isto e estamos aqui na JNation. A gente para, sabes, aqui não há stress. E quem não acredita sabe muito bem que compensa, ok? Eu vou seguindo mesmo à toa, sabes como é que é? Elizabet improvisando tipo PET. Hoje eu sou Milky Mil e quem não acredita sabe que vou ficando isto e mesmo que eu acabe. And that's it. Okay, thank you. Yeah? Well, so at this point of the story, as you can see now, the SVG is like, oh wow, I can even do like hip hop. And now we go to the next project. So the next project was much more complex than the cassette tape, or maybe not, I don't know. So when I created this, I was working for a startup in Dublin. And this startup, because my first job in Dublin was like for the bank industry, and I actually went there just because the salary was good. But after 1 year working there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not meant to work for the bank industry. So I was like, oh, I need to find like a creative job. And there was this cinema startup recruiting, and I went to the interview and they said, yeah, we're searching for someone that can do everything. And I was, okay, I'm that person. I can design and do the code. And once I start working there, I start like creating some illustrations, and the startup was related with the cinema. So I had this illustration like a popcorn with a cute face on it. But with time, like I was in the design team, and some developers every day were asking me like, oh, can you send me a new illustration for an error page? Can you send me illustration for a modal? And basically, I was always doing the same. I was just grabbing the same illustration, and I was just changing the face. So because I'm too lazy, I start thinking maybe I need a way of create something simple, reusable, and can I actually like cover different scenarios? So then I start thinking maybe I should create something like the Bootstrap, where we can have like different states like the success, info, warning, or danger. And so I start thinking maybe I can do that with an illustration, because basically I'm just changing the face. So one day I was thinking about that, and I was, oh, there's this Kawaii type of illustrations, and the Kawaii illustration is basically any type of illustration just with a face on it. So anything can be a Kawaii. You can have like a mug, you can have an ice cream, and a hat, and if you put like a cute face on it, it's a kawaii. So I thought, okay, this is perfect to create like illustrations. So first thing then that I did, almost like the cassette tape, was to export from SVG to GSX. It's very similar. Instead of just having like the dash, it will be like a camel case. And then I start defining the face components. So in this component, it's basically like different moods. So we have like the sad, shocked, happy, blissful, love-struck, excited, and KO. And this just started with 5, and with time, I started improving and creating more moods. And this is like how the face component works. So basically, it's just if statements. If it's happy is one part of the SVG. If it's sad, it will basically load one other part of the SVG. And then I define the kawaii component. And the kawaii component is basically the body of the illustration. So in this case, if we have the ghost, inside the ghost we'll leave the face component. So it's almost like human, you know. So this is like an example. And here, I'm not sure if you can see it properly, but it's basically, yeah, very bad. Sorry for that. Bad design. And so basically here you have the planet component. So inside there's different props. So you can pass like the size, the color, and the mood. And inside also leaves the face component. So if you say the size is 200 pixels, I will replace in the SVG the property width. And every part that I have colors, like the fill, let's say in the original one, like this ghost, where it was gray, I replaced with the props color. So this way then you can do this. So basically you call the component and you just need to say what's the size, the mood, and the color that you want, and the illustration will change. So this is basically how can you call then the components. So you can import the planet browser or the ice cream from React Kawaii, and then you just need to define. If you don't define by default, it will have one size, one color, but you can specify your own size, mood, and color. And then I decided to create like an NPM package, and actually it was the most difficult part for me, believe me. And now let's see the demo. So you can change the mood, the color, also the size. This is my favorite one, the backpack. And let's say that it's sad because the talk is almost finishing, and you can change the color and the size. And then you have other components. I also like the cat. By the way, I'm using the style guidist to, and you can have like the different components, and the good thing is you can create your own libraries, and if you work like for a company that has different scenarios and every day like different components like modals and error pages and things that you have to achieve, like a success page, you can actually create these type of illustrations, and then you just define, in my case it's the mood, but maybe in your company will be a different property. And then it's faster, you don't need to depend on in a designer to actually change something. So at this part of the story, and we're almost finishing, so the SVG and React now are like BFFs forever, and they are really happy. And that's it, so let's make the web fun again. I hope you start using the SVG. I think right now we're not using SVGs. We keep using HTML and CSS for a lot of things. And maybe sometimes we struggle a lot to achieve some kind of UIs with CSS and HTML. And I think with SVGs, we can create like this different type of layouts, like the cassette tape or illustrations. And then you can add event handlers, you can have properties and animate. And that's it. Thank you. Okay. And I think I have time for questions if yes.
Are there any cross-browser considerations for SVG, or is it a standard?
Yeah. Right now, the only scenario that I had that didn't work the way I was expected was with React Native. And actually, someone opened like an issue and said, oh, it doesn't work with React Native. And I opened like a code sandbox, and I said, yeah, it works. But actually, one day I was really using the real React Native, because the React Native from Code Sandbox is actually web. That's why it was working. And I realized that for React Native or for iOS apps, you really need to use other things to convert to SVGs. So it was the only scenario that I think is not working. So, any more questions? Okay. So, thank you.